and welcome to More to the Story. My name is Michelle Ankerberg, and I'm here with my cousin, Jeff Blanche.
And we're here at the National Religious Broadcasters Convention in Nashville, Tennessee, and we're getting to sit down with some of the leading Christian broadcasters all around the world to hear what God is doing. We have the awesome privilege today of sitting down with Mark Patterson, who is from GNC TV, who they translate and then broadcast our television program in Ukrainian and Russian all throughout Russia and Europe area. So Michelle, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Yeah, and Mark, we're so glad to have you here today.
I'm glad to be here.
Yes. So kind of tell us how you started out, kind of how you became a Christian, where you kind of grew up, and how you got into ministry work.
I grew up in a Christian home. My parents were missionaries. I grew up in the jungles of Borneo, actually.
Wow.
They were missionaries first in Singapore, Malaysia, and then on into Indonesia. And we were there for many years until we had to go home for high school. But for me, my journey, when I left high school and went off to college, I walked away, as I'm sure you've heard from many people. But what really led me back to make a personal, individualized decision to follow Christ was that, frankly, I was bored with life. And I was so used to being in a youth group where I could relate to girls like we were all friends, and suddenly in the world, you got to watch what you say and how you say it, and I didn't enjoy life.
Yeah.
And I almost said, to the Lord, I'm bored. And the Lord said, bored? Follow me and you'll never be bored. And I can honestly say that when I made that commitment, life has been very interesting.
Oh, wow, that's really
Yeah.
So what happened next then?
Yeah.
How did you maybe I'll ask you, and then how did you get into broadcasting?
I met an amazing woman when I was 19 years old. She was 23, a little bit out of my league. and I tried to, in a very roundabout way, propose at the age of 19, and she said, Mark, God's called me into missions. And I was like, hey, been there, done that.
Yeah.
But we got married within a year of that.
Wow.
And it took a few years, but by the time we were in our late 20s, God headed us off to Singapore.
Wow.
My parents were back there. I finished a degree in biblical theology. God, what do I do with this? I felt, Helen was thinking France. She'd learned French in school. I was thinking Iran.
Yeah. Wow.
Somewhere along there, the Soviet Union opened up, and we thought Kazakhstan was ripe for opportunity.
Wow.
Yeah. And we went there, we met an amazing man. I went with an organization called Operation Mobilization, or some know it as OM. I became the regional director for OM for Northwest China, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan. But a Russian pastor by the name of Maxim Maximov said, God has told me to start a Christian TV channel. Will you help me as far as the business development side of it?
Yeah.
And making a long story very short, I had to take off all the other hats I was wearing and just focus on this project, which became a ministry in its own right, 24/7 streaming Russian language Christian television.
Wow. That's really cool. Yeah. And so how long has the channel been going?
The channel has been going over 20 years. And the testimonies that have come out, and not just from Russia and Ukraine, but Central Asia, the letters from Russian and Ukrainian women that have gone to the Middle East, I'm sorry to say this, gone to the Middle East to trade, to buy products, to bring back, but sell themselves while they're there. Some of them married there, stayed there, don't know what religion to bring up their children, writing to us from Morocco, from Iraq, from all over the Middle East, watching CNL, because we were on the same channel broadcasting into Russia, also covers the Middle East.
Wow.
And so testimonies coming from places in Siberia and Central Asia where it's not that easy to go to church, either because of other religious influences or because of the, you can be 250 miles away from a major road in Siberia, but anyone and everyone has a satellite dish.
Yes, exactly.
And so that's really the growth and the response that we've had from the hunger. You see, when Soviet system collapsed, when communism went away, everybody was like, oh, we're Christians again, but had no idea what that meant. Christianity, to many in that part of the world, is more a superstition than a faith. And so the role of Christian television, of CNL and of course now GNC, is what we're calling it, is bringing a message of faith and of hope and how to have a personal relationship with a Savior.
Wow.
What are some of the issues then that are struggling and the needs that you see among Russian and Ukrainian speakers?
The same issues are the same here. Fatherlessness, drug abuse, domestic violence, abortion. I mean, I remember, I don't know recent statistics, but when we lived in Kazakhstan in the late 90s, I remember my wife doing prenatal classes and learning things like the average woman has had 7 abortions.
Wow.
It was the only form of contraception.
Right.
Now, if the Russian Baptist underground people had no abortions, that means some had a lot more than 7.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the tragedy, both physically and emotionally, that does, not only on the woman, but even the man.
Sure.
I mean, the needs. 8-year-olds living homeless, sniffing glue under bridges.
Right.
The needs here, the same as the needs there.
Wow.
The type of things you need to talk about, that you need to address with your viewers, our viewers need to hear the same answers.
Sure. Where do you see the network going for the future? What are there other plans for it? I mean, with everything else that's happening in the world.
Absolutely.
I mean, you are a key message out there for
We
people.
live in a very fast, technically evolving systems, as you know. And you know, when we started out, the main thing was to be on satellite. Then it's cable. Now it's IPTV.
Yeah.
Now it's apps.
Right.
And our partnership with Rick Renner Ministries in Moscow is opening up, because we started in Kazakhstan. We then went to Ukraine. And right now, everything that we do is out of Kiev. But of course, Pastor Rick is in Moscow.
Wow.
And with all his contacts, with all his resources, we are growing exponentially because of that partnership, because of Pastor Rick's input and oversight that he's bringing to GNC. We want to be able to develop in many ways. Technically, we want to be HD on all platforms, but we also want to be on more platforms. In Ukraine, we're on every cable station we can be on. We're on over 250 cable stations.
Wow.
In Russia, it's a lot more difficult. We haven't had those same relationships with shall we say, legal registrations. Pastor Rick is helping us with that. And so we're hoping to be on a lot more platforms going forward in Russia.
Wow. Yeah. And that's where our show is airing every week. I think many of our donors and our viewers, they don't realize the full impact that the ministry has and the scope of it, that people in Ukraine today can watch our program if they have access to a TV, or people all throughout Russia and Ukraine can watch our show right now. And I just want to show a little clip of it, because it's actually, we have them not just translated with subtitles, but we actually have voiceovers. And so I want you to see a little clip that we're going to play right now.
З 1975 року
З 75-го року.
і ти досліджував різні джерела – англійські, французькі, німецькі.
Французькі, німецькі, англійські джерела. Сьогодні вже багато французьких і німецьких джерел перекладені, але багато ще не перекладені.
So Mark, we appreciate you being on the program today, and tell us and the viewers how we can pray for you, the network, as it's going out to these different regions of the world.
Well, as you know, we're dealing with a lot of challenges at the moment in Ukraine, but also in Russia. And I'm glad to say, you know, as we're doing this in March, I want to say that our teams in Moscow and in Kiev have a great relationship, working well together. We all love each other, and we're doing great things. But pray for unity. Pray that we can continue to communicate, that we can continue to, the different teams can support each other. But, you know, I also want to say personally to Brother John and to Darlene and really to all the donors, thank you so much, because, you know, last year we were looking at focusing on the Russian channel, but you guys decided to come back onto the Ukrainian language channel, and we're doing that production again. And we're on almost every day, I want to see, in the Ukrainian language, because that's very important. If you want to reach the heart and the mind of someone, you've got to go through their mother tongue.
Yes.
And we're so thankful that you're able to come to allow us to do that work for Russian and Ukrainian. So please pray that we can continue with that our staff can keep doing that work despite the challenges.
Definitely. Well, Mark, we appreciate you being here today
Thank
and
you.
sharing
Yes, thank
your
you.
vision and what's happening overseas, and just what you're doing for the ministry and for the Lord as well. So we appreciate that. And join us next time for more to the story.